Looking good, you guys. Ho, ho. Gonna hold. Gonna hold another gold. Ah, looking good, good. Well, we got some champion dancers right there, man. Looking good, you guys. Looking good. That's hard. Hey! ho! How about that, huh? Well, thanks up to for singing that.
Estango, Seminole Sida. My name is Lauren Ashley Buford. I am the principal chief here at the Coxsaciola Seminole Indian Reservation. This is the Oklavaha Band Yamasee Seminoles. Our land here was passed down to us through generations, dating all the way back to Kui Hardro's town. Yeah, I am the hereditary chief of my nation, which means it's been passed down to me through 4 generations of my lifetime. My great-grandfather was Big Bear Cox, and then he passed it on to his daughter, Principal Chief Little Dove Buford, and then when she passed away, that was my grandmother. She passed it to my grandfather, which was Norman Buford, which was Chief Running Buck. And then just over a year ago, after my father had been Principal Chief, Miko Tuscanucci Chikawasta, or Alan Little Buck Buford, he was my chief, and he passed away just over a year ago, which passed on the responsibilities of being a caretaker to my nation and of this land to me. So it's a long family history. It is a generational responsibility that you're born with to be a community member. And we believe that each person is given specific gifts, and these gifts, you're born with these things that you're able to give back to other people. So the whole concept of generosity and reciprocity is very ingrained into your very identity. So even when you say your clans or you say what tribe you're from, it shows your responsibility, that I am responsible for the Oklawaha, which is the black water. It's the river that our people have always lived upon. And this nation, it continues to try to educate and others on how our people lived here before contact with Western civilization and how we're continuing to be here today. So a lot of people, they may not understand how reservations came to be. A lot of tribes really had to fight very hard for hundreds of years to be able to maintain their sovereignty, which means, you know, their land base and their own governing systems. So as sovereign nations with living within the United States, we have dual citizenship. And a lot of those rights over the years have been, you know, it hasn't always come easy for a lot of people. They've had to struggle and help educate their surrounding people and work with different law enforcement, and sometimes even protesting or just helping get out there and educate people one person at a time about where were these original inhabitants, where were these original residents, and where did they come from. And so when people talk about reservations, you know, over the past 500 years, each generation, they took on that responsibility to continue to educate people of this, whose land was this originally. But more importantly, more than ownership, it's more the education that goes along with it. It goes back to the respect and the duties that are ingrained into your heritage and into your culture, that have sacred teachings about how we relate to this land and how it is our mother and is our caretaker, and how we do different ceremonies throughout the years depending on the seasons to say thank you for what the earth has provided back to us. It's a gift to be born into a specific tribe, and with it comes responsibilities, but those responsibilities aren't seen as a burden, but yet it helps enrich your life. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be able to teach people these stories, because for a long time they were outlawed. It was in the United States, it was actually outlawed to have a gathering like this. You know, they would come in and they would see it as an act of war. If you were doing your ceremonies, or if you were just, you know, having a social dance to pray and give thanks to your creator. So we don't want to take, you know, gatherings like this for granted, because we want to remember those people who did die for our rights to be able to share about our culture and talk freely about it and educate it with others, and then also just celebrate and say those sacred songs and share those dances. And that's a little bit of what we do at a powwow. Powwows are intertribal, meaning there's many different ways different tribes celebrate the season changings and gatherings. With the gatherings have different social dances. So there's lots of different tribes that come together, but they share the same basic principles, that they want to celebrate what they've been given, and they want a chance to talk to people and educate them about what they've been passed down from their ancestors. For a long time, many tribes had to come to their lands and their ceremonial lands, and they had to hold their ceremonies in secret. That's just like this land here. We, as a tribe, when it was illegal in Florida for Native Americans to own land, this land was technically stripped from us, and we would risk our families' lives to come and to hold our ceremonies in our stomp grounds and light those sacred fires, because that was who we were, and we knew we had a responsibility to the land to continue those ceremonies every season. But yes, if you were found, anyone in Florida could be given money for killing a Native American, and if you got a reward for telling them where a group of natives were gathered, you would get money for it, for the killing of Native people, even if it was just a ceremony and praying. So that continued for a long time, up until, when American Indian movement with different rights were passed. The Native American Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA, it really focused on not only giving religious freedoms back to tribes and back to the communities, and kind of correcting those misguided laws that outlawed our singing and culture and dances, but then it also talked about our ceremonial goods that were stolen and sometimes placed into museums. How could, and especially when it had to do with remains of people who have been buried, the NAGPRA Act, it actually gave the tribes rights to go and take those bones and give them a proper burial, and return those sacred artifacts back to the tribes. So that happened within my lifetime, and people are still working towards asserting that law. But that was just one law, and many of the federal Indian policies that Native American people continue today to try to struggle with gaining access to their sacred lands, holding on to them and preserving them, to celebrate their religious freedoms openly. And it's something that we take very seriously. And so as you're a child born into this nation, you're told these things at a very young age, so that when you're participating, it may not always be easy. It may be hot and tired and sweaty, and you're like, why am I out here in the swamp? That's when your parents tell you, people fought and died for you to have the right to be here, to sing these songs. And we're very honest with our children that a lot of people had to suffer so that they had the freedom to be here and to celebrate who they are. We actually take what was once a traditional gathering and a social gathering, and we've actually adapted it to the now commonly known powwows, which is an intertribal gathering. Traditionally, we would celebrate the harvest and give thanks for everything that we've been blessed with during the fall and autumn seasons. And then it would be really to invite all the people from surrounding tribes to make sure that they had enough food and water to get stored away, and provisions to make it through the winter. And then once again they made it through the winter, then it was time to celebrate that there was a new life, and that it was a beginning of a new year in the springtime, that things were blooming, and that we were blessed to have made it through the winter as a community. So even if they weren't necessarily from your tribe, that was a social gatherings that happened in the fall and in the springtime to celebrate that generosity, and then also that community building, that you're here for people and that you take time to hear their stories and share their seasonal storytellings, and celebrate that you've made it through another season together. So that's why we have our powwows in October and February of every year. And we celebrate what we've been given, and we look forward to the new life of the new season as you go into planting and harvesting. We always look forward to hosting any educational groups. We work closely with youth groups specifically. We offer free primitive camping to anyone who's interested to come out. I would highly encourage them to please contact our tribal office if you're interested in either attending one of our upcoming social gatherings or having a private camping and learning more about us and our culture. We feel happy to do so. Our phone number is 352-546-3910.